Today, briefly, 31st of October 2022, I'll be assessing the future. Oh, sorry now. Hello everyone. Today, briefly, from the perspective of, oh, am I live or not? And cancel. Sorry about this. I keep getting these closer news applications. I hope I can start now. 31st of October 2022, and I'll be briefly assessing the future of Russia and the Wagner Group in the context of a timeline, a very important chronological timeline of the invasion of Iraq. The United States invaded Iraq in the 90s in a coalition with the United Nations, and the pretext was that Iraq had invaded Kuwait. However, after reading extensively in the matter, I find that it's very coincidental that Kuwait would be at the center of the problem, and other countries were invaded by their next neighbors were not. But most importantly, if there's sufficient evidence that can lead us to believe that the invasion of Iraq was planned by Iran, Russia, and Ukraine, and Iran, Russia, and Kuwait. You might think that's ridiculous because you'd never say that Ukraine, for example, planned its own invasion. Fine. However, when I am going through the WikiLeaks documents and other private data that has been leaked about the Wagner Group, I have my concerns around concepts of Zionism and around concepts that there was a financial necessity for the United States and the United Nations to invade Iraq. Let's look from the point of view of Russia. We have the crumbling down of Soviet Union, and you have an obsolete military structure that needs to sell a lot of armament urgently. And you also have WikiLeaks reports and interviews. When I Google verbatim, word by word, of certain people, interviews, it leads me to other leaders of different countries who are accused of Zionism. For example, I am going to the WikiLeaks document about Kuwait. This is an official document by the US diplomacy on someone called, I will take my time to pronounce, and I am sorry, Gamani. Hope I pronounced it properly. The same business and person who in 2009 invested 1 billion in Russia, for Russia, the Russian Federation, to develop the electrical energy, the system of producing energy to export abroad. And the same company that invited and opened the doors to Russia by co-financing to develop these electricity and nuclear systems in the Middle East and opened the doors to co-financing. We're talking about the Kuwaiti. You might think, what does this have to do with Wagner Group? I went to a website where we can check all the bank accounts and the informations about the offshore accounts of companies and countries. And I was particularly interested on the offshore entities matched with Wagner Group. And you will be surprised that they're all linked to Kuwait. Wagner Financial Inc. INC, whose jurisdiction in Panama, is linked to Kuwait. And the other companies linked to the Wagner Group with the same owners, Independent Petroleum Group Limited, with headquarters in Kuwait, which in March 2020 was delisted by OFAC under the scope of European sanctions, linked to Kuwait. Rakan Investment Group Corporation, jurisdiction in Panama, linked to Kuwait, presently headquarters in Turkey, California and Pakistan. Note that this Al-Gamani is also expanding to Pakistan and Egypt with surveillance companies offering security and surveillance, anti-terrorism. Borders Group SA, jurisdiction Panama, linked to Kuwait. Oil and Gas Directory, Middle East, Trading and Contracting Agent Monarch Fonseca. As I continue my research of Rakan Investment, I bump into Soft Cloud GmbH, a Germany company which surveys the internet in Iran and can find any dissident or YouTuber or person who is talking bad of the Iran government. Now, you say, how is this further related? According to the European Union research, in 2017, the financing of the Islamic State had money tied up to Kuwait, going via Syria to Sunni militias. Now, this is the same Kuwait which this person, Fuad Al-Ghanin, invested 1 billion in Russia's power generation and invited co-financing for both countries. When I started looking at his interviews, advert button, because I remind you that I'm going through the American confidential files on this person. I find something that if you're Palestinian, I am sorry, but this is seen as Zionism. I find a quote in here. He's praising Kuwait, and in one of these quotes, you cannot have stability in Iraq until you solve the situation in Palestine. I googled this quote and I bumped into an Iranian leader, which is portrayed as a Zionist, in an interview of 2015, where it says that Iran funds mosques and religious shrines in Iraq, has prior and during ISIS was funding and investing billions, though there's the embargoes, billions, 420 billions, in constructing holy shrines in Iraq. And most important, where, as one of the leaders, Zarif, states, ISIS is a product of two things. First is the United States invasion of Iraq and the foreign presence that creates a dynamic of resistance. To combat ISIS, Zarif argued, the fertile ground provided by the group's ideology must be renewed, and policies in the region need to be changed, especially regarding Palestine. How is it possible that the United States, writing a confidential report about this man in 2003 and writes this, and then the person I Google the quote and comes with the Iran's leader, almost identical ad verbatim quote. How is this possible? Now we are going to move further. We've seen the financing. Now we are going, and you've seen that the offshore entities matched with Wagner Group are matched with Kuwait. Now my question is, how is it possible that when one country doesn't get into a door, the other country goes and gets in? For example, the Red Sea. Israel is knocking on the door of the Red Sea and exploring a gas and wants to supply Arab gas to Europe. Arab gas which historically is from Lebanon and which has been contested by Hezbollah. How is it possible that in January 2022 there's this release of this article? Kuwait releases 3 suspects on bail in Hezbollah financing case, and other article, Kuwait of September 2022, that Kuwait cannot fight the Iranian terror finance. How is it possible that Kuwait, who already has so much money from ISIS circulating, just like in Madagascar, circulating, also is pointed as a hub for Hezbollah's terrorist group, considered a terrorist group, which also is reivindicating the Red Sea gas hubs, which historically belonged to Lebanon, and now Israel is expanding and seeking to expand the gas and increase further and further supply of gas to Europe to combat Russia sanctions. Are we talking about just these situations? No, we are not. Because now we get into another chronological question I have. Russia assigns a treaty with Sudan recently to build a naval base in the Red Sea because the Iran presence is not welcome, and Iran will face problems like having the ships bombed or exploding and all these kind of bizarre episodes. When Iran is retrieving, Russia announces that is building 6 naval ports in Africa. Guess where? And guess what all these countries have in common? Terrorism. Well, not direct. ISIS, all of them, with the exception of Madagascar, which have financial terrorism, and suspected Indo-Pakistani ISIS financing terrorism. Now we have Russia confirms 6 planned building of naval bases in Africa. Central African Republic, which, my friends, is an administrative division of the Islamic State. Egypt, which had the Sinai insurgency, and most important in September 2022, practically last month, where ISIS carried a terrorist attack in Sinai. So we have terrorism in Egypt. Eritrea, I remind you, the IS, the Eritrean Islamic Salvation and the Eritrean Islamic Jihad. We have Madagascar, which have Indo-Pakistani ISIS sympathizers and a lot of financing which the country cannot control. We have Mozambique, which have Indo-Pakistani ISIS, and we have Sudan, which will be a serious problem because of the nuclear transit and all the Chinese military plans for Sudan and neighborings. Now again, we have this Wagner group operating in these countries, planned ports, and all connected to Kuwait. I come to think that there has to be a connection, a timeline connection between the US invasion of Iraq and the capital, which Russia did not have. Russia was crumbling before the invasion of Iraq, and then it became this very rich, powerful country, and so did the Wagner group. My concern now is in terms of the concepts that are at play and that we seem to be giving too much attention, and how they run parallel with expansionist and containing strategies of world trade domination. Today, the United Nations released some documents informing the public that we are trying to guarantee that Ukraine can export the grain, these such achievements have been done, etc., etc. But Ukraine is a small proportion of the territorial ambition of Russia and its allies. And whoever they are looking at the Red Sea, they are looking at all straight canals and all straits that will give a commercial and economic financial to big key players in the world. Japan, China, and China in the ambit of the One Belt Initiative are now regular customers of Russia for the Northern Canal. So they're not using the Suez Canal, they're not going further down, they're going up. The Red Sea, the Red Sea Initiative, future Red Sea Initiative. I am live, please give me a minute. Will rival with this canal, but in terms of nuclear energy. Russia and Iran are concluding the international north-south transport corridor. So, again, it's a parallel project to the Suez. How can we say that Al-Mandab Strait in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, the Straits of Hormuz, are not vital for Europe? Because they are, in terms of data, the oil and the food, and are not something that the United Nations should be keeping an eye, instead of fully concentrating on the Ukraine Sea. Do you know why I'm saying this? Because nobody is safeguarding the Ukrainians and the production of their food. So if the food is destroyed, or if the Ukrainians are abroad and there's more fields, by the time you look to the right, you will see that the competitive canals and the power that Russia has now over countries, while the other extremity of the canals is too big for Europe and NATO financial well-being. I'll give you an example. The Channel of Suez, the Canal of Suez, stated neutrality. Meanwhile, Kuwait, same company that brought in Russia into the Middle East, is expanding aggressively in Egypt as a surveillance, covert surveillance and espionage, counter-terrorism espionage in Egypt, which has a strong say in the Suez Canal. So again, they're always parallel. Whereas one, there's the other. Sudan agreed to let Russia build a naval base. You have to look for the Red Sea and the Al-Mandab Strait. And this in the context where is the Wagner group, which is related to Kuwait, there is ISIS. So in terms of food security and in terms of the future of this world crisis, we have to look at the point where the Russian Federation came across a lot of money and influence in the Middle East and in the other countries. And this was after the United States invasion to Iraq. I want to know your opinion. Do you feel like me that's too much coincidence and that the future food crisis will aggravate based on the maritime trade, but so will the nuclear capacity? And do you feel that we should add Zionism to the equation of Ukrainism, Russianism, and all the crises, ideological and racial crises that we are living in nowadays? Or do you feel that the Palestine cause is not anti-Semitic, is not anti-Zionist, but is a key element in attracting other countries to alliances, and that indeed there's no coincidence that two key players in the Middle East, Kuwait and Iran, have precisely the same terms ad verbatim when it comes to the role of Palestine and Iraq in determining alliances in the Middle East, and that will be especially vital for Russia in the world. Thank you for listening. Please remember to follow Aryan Brit Analysis. Bye bye.